This is the ghost ship warehouse here in Oakland 6 weeks ago. And here it is today after the fire that occurred a week and a half ago. Today on the Smart Apartment Advisor show, we're going to talk about safety. If you're a property owner, it's really important to remember that even if you don't like the concept of having your building inspected and city agencies telling you how it should be maintained, it's an important part of your responsibility to maintain the safety of the people who live and occupy buildings, to abide by all of these requirements and to not take them lightly. As a tenant, it's important for you to understand how you're going to get out of a building safely when there is a disaster or some sort of an emergency, so that you're able to secure yourself and your family in case of a problem. In looking at the Google Street View photo, you can see that the garage door, which as you look at it today, looks like it would have been plenty of space for people to get out of the building quickly, was obstructed by art installations and other things. So that was effectively a wall, and it took away the most effective means of egress from the building that anybody would have had during the fire, and it made it impossible for people to get out except through two very small exits. A couple of days ago, the New York Times published an incredible article with descriptions and diagrams and photos explaining what happened here the night of the fire 12 days ago, and describing what it was that took place that caused this to be such an incredible disaster for all the people who were killed. The first important point was that the diagram showed that there were very few exits, only two, one of which led to a building next door that had, or a lot next door that was full of junk, but also the main exit to the street, which was very small. This would have been okay for a warehouse where there might have been a few people working in the building at a time, or perhaps mostly storage. If something bad had happened, if there had been an emergency like this, when it was being used as a warehouse, the people inside could have gotten out more quickly. With the number of people who had gathered in the warehouse the night of the fire, they weren't able to get out these exits quickly enough because there were too many people and the exits were too small. Another important point was that the exit path was obstructed by a partition wall and some pianos that had been set here. So as people came from the second level on this makeshift set of stairs, they had to go down several different turns, and then they had to make two left turns and a right turn in order to find the exit and get to safety out here on the street. It's important to note that they, in many ways, were finding themselves trapped going through this other door here to the kitchen, which was a room that would have trapped them as opposed to taking them to safety. So in a properly configured residential property or a gathering space, you'd have something like a lighted exit sign so people could tell the difference from a room that had no exit to the street and the proper exit that would lead them to safety. People who had been interviewed and who had visited the property and were interviewed for this article also pointed out that in the times that they had visited this facility before the actual event took place, before the disaster took place, they had a problem navigating through this maze-like exit path. And if people in their normal, everyday visiting of the property have a hard time getting through here, it's absolutely certain that in a context where there's a disaster, where the building's full of smoke and there are lots of people and they're crushing toward the exits, if they can even find them, and there are tripping hazards, there's people on the ground perhaps, all of those things make it very, very difficult, if not impossible, to find your way to the exits to safety. And I want everybody to know what they need to know when you get into a gathering space, how you can be safe and how you can be aware to prevent yourself from becoming a part of a terrible tragedy like the one that occurred. The first important thing to know is that any gathering space or residential unit or facility that you would visit needs to have sufficient egress for everybody to get out. In an apartment, that's 2 means of egress, which in some circumstances is your front door and your back door, as long as they both, or at least one of them, goes to the exterior of the building. But you're also talking about sometimes a fire escape where it goes out through a window, and the window needs to be properly maintained, and the fire escape itself also needs to be maintained and operable. In a situation where you have lots of people meeting in a small space, or lots of people meeting in a space that wouldn't necessarily be used for that kind of a gathering, you need to be sure that everybody can see where the exits are and they know how to get to them, and that the exits are large enough for people to be able to get out quickly enough so that they're safe and they can escape. The next important part to understand about safety in situations where you have lots of people gathering or residential properties, that there has to be a clear path to the exits, and it has to be in a logical way, so that when you are stressed and you are scared and there's smoke and there's fire, that everybody can get out in a reasonable way.